Gators Breakdown episode 121 is ready to go. The recruiting trail is getting hot, starting with Dan Mullen in his first class with the Gators early signing period. We'll have somewhat an effect, and we will break all that down here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. And joining me this episode of Gators Breakdown from the 24/7 Sports Network and GatorBreak.net is Blake Alderman. Blake, along with Thomas Goldcamp and Luke Stampini, run that site second to none in all the coverage that they bring when discussing the Florida Gators. So, Blake, I can't thank you enough for joining me here on Gators Breakdown again.
Absolutely. Always good to come back on. It's been a little while, though.
Yeah, it has been. Everything we were talking about before we came on, everything was kind of a whirlwind with McElwain getting fired and then the hiring of Dan Mullen and just the season, the last month of the season in general for us.
Sure, it's been quick. I know. I feel like it was just the other day I was sitting there watching the end of the FSU game, and now it's like, where was my life these last couple weeks? Like, I feel like, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, man, what was I doing? I was on autopilot. So I'm definitely looking forward to this dead period. I'm looking forward to this big upcoming weekend, and I'm looking forward to things kind of slowing down. I'm not going to lie. I know fans are probably going to be like, no, please, but please think of me a little bit.
There we go. Absolutely. So what can guys look for from you guys coming up at 24/7 and GatorBait.net? We know the Gators don't have a bowl game, of course, so recruiting under new head coach Dan Mullen is the main topic these days.
Sure. Yeah, we've a lot of the hot topic now is filling this coaching staff, and I think that that's something that they're going to continue to do the rest of this month and through the first of the year. So we'll have coverage on that, and obviously recruiting is these guys have been everywhere. We've been trying to give up to date coverage on every visit that these assistants are out making, and how these in-home visits are going, and maybe some of these guys that that this new staff can reel in, and some guys that should be on Florida's radar. So we've had wall-to-wall coverage. It's been busy, and I'm looking forward to this big upcoming weekend, and things even kind of maybe slowing down, hopefully.
Absolutely. So, guys, definitely go check out 24/7 Sports, GatorBait.net for great recruiting coverage and Gator coverage in general with basketball season out there, too. Remember, you can find all your Gators Breakdown episodes on SoundCloud, iTunes, and YouTube. Google Play now as well. Search on those sites. You get the links by following Gators Breakdown on Twitter and on Facebook at Gators Breakdown. Hey, look, when you're on Google Play, iTunes, rate and review the show. Let Gator Nation know what they're getting with Gators Breakdown. So, Blake, you mentioned it has been a little while since we've had you on and talked to you. So how would you grade the Gators' hire of Dan Mullen overall, and then specifically for recruiting? We know it's hard to recruit to Starkville, Mississippi, and it's been almost a decade since he's been able to recruit with the Gator logo on his chest.
Sure. I give it a B. I thought at first it was – kind of a comfort zone hire, Scott Strickland, with their time working together at Mississippi State. Obviously, he's from that Florida tree. But, the more you really think about it, it really was a hire that made sense. You have a guy that has been a part of successful tenure at Florida. He knows what it takes. And the more I thought about it, there's a certain kind of swag you have to have in Florida. And, whenever he was doing his press conference and Dan was name-dropping so many of these Gators, I think that was the thing that – a lot of people at Florida, there's people that are involved. You have Steve Spurrier upstairs, right there, or right down the hall or whatever, name dropping like that, going to the Hall of Fame inductee with him. He just knows the way that Gator Nation, it's what they want in a coach, someone that is, has ties to the program and just knows what it means to be there. And I think that's something that Dan is kind of shown. Really being, a lot of recruits even say it too, that he's really excited to be there. And, you can tell that from him, how he talks, doing little videos while he's out on the trail. And I know a lot of visitors this past weekend said that, the energy is there. So, I think that it's more impressive of a hire, but, I give it a B. I think that it's not the big time splash hire that's going to get headlines everywhere, but I think he's going to get the job done. And, I think that fans are going to be pleasantly surprised with what he can do for offense.
Yeah, and coming in, he's going to have some philosophical shifts on both sides of the ball. Gators will now go to more of a power spread with a big emphasis on running the ball, but also on the other side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, shifting from a 4-3 to a 3-4. In Mullen's short time, can we see the differences in targets because of these shifts on both sides of the ball, or is the Gator recruiting board now changing with the style of play he's going to bring to Gainesville?
Yeah, I think the defense, you're going to see a little changes there. Obviously, linebacker is kind of an emphasis that they need to look on. And, I've seen Grantham out. Nick Benito is a guy out at St. Thomas Aquinas that, kind of fits that spacey 3-4 rush outside linebacker. Andrew Chatfield is another big-time target that's kind of moving up on Florida's board. Not that he wasn't already a big-time target for Florida after he landed that offer. But, Grantham, these are some of the first guys that he's targeted. Quay Walker is another guy. He's an Alabama commit that got a visit from Florida earlier this week. They're going to need some guys when they kind of move to that style of defense that Coach Grantham's going to bring in there. JUCO guys, that's kind of another philosophy that Coach Mullen has brought in on the recruiting trail. Being over there at Mississippi State and having all those junior colleges around there, that's a way to juice up your roster. You want to add some experience on there. You can pluck a couple guys from junior college, maybe even on the line. Linebacker, I don't know where they're at with junior college linebackers, but, they definitely have hit some guys in the trenches on the defensive line and offensive line for sure. And I think that's where you're going to see that Coach Mullen's going to try to beef it up and, really kind of get that offensive line pushing because, like you said, he's going to try to run the ball in that offense for sure. And looking, kind of more of a mobile quarterback. I think that's kind of the thing we're going to look at. He just offered Jalen Jones, a 2019 quarterback that was a former Mississippi State commit, 6'3", 180 pounds, can throw and run it. I think you're going to kind of see him bringing more of a mobile quarterback into there. Also with Coach Grantham's defense, kind of those bigger corners. You have a former Florida State commit, and he's listed as a safety, John Huggins, out at Daytona Mainland, but he was offered by Grantham as a cornerback. He's a 6'2", 200-pound kid, so really big physical corner that can play safety, can play nickel, kind of one of those guys I call them plug-and-play guys because you can fit him in and wherever you really need him, and he can probably have some success there. So I think that those are going to be really the big parts that you see that maybe some kind of change on the recruiting trail with how Coach Mullen, really targets these prospects when he's putting together these boards.
Yeah, Blake, I know it's early and he's only been on the job for a couple of weeks. And Will Miles just kind of he sent this in, kind of wanting to know, is there a difference in what you've seen so far between Mullen and McElwain on the trail? Is McElwain more hands-on, or does it look like McElwain try to delegate a lot of the recruiting, but Mullen seems to be a little more hands-on maybe?
Sure. I think that Coach McElwain was more of a, bring him in on official visit, definitely spend that time in there. And, McElwain definitely had a couple targets that, Jacob Copeland was a main recruiter, was McElwain. So, he had some guys, but I think it was more of, like you said, he delegated it to a lot of his assistants and kind of trusted them to, not only take care of their areas and then kind of pass it on to your position coaches. You kind of form that relationship. So, I think that was kind of the mold there. And Mullen really seems to be a lot more hands-on, like you said. I even saw that on his Twitter account. I think it was a couple weeks ago. He put a video out when he was on the recruiting trail, just excited to be here. I'm out here working hard. Those are things that are really kind of more personable. And I think that's really kind of the thing from Coach Mullen is he has a bigger personality. And I think that's something that recruits are going to pick up on. Fans, I think, are picking up on, and obviously his coaching staff, he wants those guys that are going to go in there and do their job and get their guys, but maybe some guys that are kind of those dogs on the trail, those guys that are going to really go in there and recruit really hard. And I think McElwain kind of added some of those guys later on in his staff, but really kind of his inaugural staff really wasn't maybe the A-list team for SEC recruiting. And I think that the lack of kind of an alpha recruiter there really kind of hurt McElwain too. And I think that Coach Mullen really kind of understands that, and I think he's going to try to get some guys on there that are, really going to put in that extra effort on the trail.
So we know early signing period's coming. It kind of is changing the recruiting world. We're figuring out, and hey, Florida has a new staff that's also trying to figure this out while they're figuring out the job and early recruiting all at the same time. So are there leftovers from current the McElwain commits that are going to still plan on early signing, early enrolling, or are they delaying decision till February, or how would this class look after the first early signing period?
I think that you're going to see a lot of Florida's guys take advantage of that early signing period. I've been trying to catch up with a couple guys. There's, still kind of a couple of stragglers that I have left, but, Florida could have, at least for my count right now with a couple names still left, they could have 10 of their 13 guys, take advantage, committed now, take advantage of that early signing period. A couple of those guys obviously will enroll early, but, it's definitely good for Florida to have this, this big chunk of their class out of the way. You can have these guys already in the fold. They can come and visit whenever they want due to, once you sign those papers, you can come in and see coaches during the dead period or what have you. That's something that can build more on that bond. But then also lets, Coach Mullen not only fill his staff, but also kind of piece together, the recruiting board going forward. Okay, we got these guys on deck. What's our needs now? Where do we need to attack it? And I think that that's where you're going to see them go in January, where they piece together more of these official visitors and kind of attack other positions of need.
Gotcha. So we know finally Mullen kind of got to bring recruits on to the Florida campus as being head coach this past weekend. Finally, the first official where players could officially visit Florida with him as head coach. It seemed to go well with not many recruits on, not a lot of them on campus. The numbers were kind of small compared to some of the visits you get. But hey, Florida even got a commitment out of it with Evan McPherson, the kicker flip from Mississippi State. Seemed to all go well for the most part with Mullen's first official visit weekend.
I think that the reason why you saw kind of a smaller number is because, the recruiting game now, man, it's everyone wants to get your final visit. I think that that's where you'll see maybe a little bit more names on the visitor list this coming weekend with guys coming in. But, they had a lot of guys that were committed there that are planning on signing early and enrolling early. So it got a chance for them to, kind of bond with some of those guys. Obviously, 5-star Jamari Salyer was the bigger name, but I think he's going to head to Georgia despite taking that visit to Florida. I think that's where my crystal ball is on the 24/7 Sports Network. Right now, I put that in. I think last week I was one of the later guys to put it in, but, it still counts. I guess, when you look at it, it was successful because they get the kicker. They get some of those, those commits really kind of more personable time with the new coaching staff because it's, they're not so much focused on guys that aren't committed, if that makes sense. They can spend more time. The coaches aren't preoccupied with trying to, wine and dine some of these other guys on their board, and it can really get those relationships forged because, there are some new faces in Gainesville for them to get to know. So, I think overall it was successful. Guys committed there a lot more solid than they, maybe were coming in and, obviously got a commitment from a kicker because if Eddie does head to the NFL, that's something that you have to keep an eye on. It's definitely a guy that can bring in a really solid leg. And I think I saw a video on Twitter that he hit a field goal from 60 yards, so he's got some range. And, it's definitely good to have I think Florida fans all know that, having one of those kickers is important for your team.
Absolutely, and it seems like they could just really never take advantage of Pinheiro and having a offense that could help take advantage of him.
I've been waiting for Evan and Eddie to have like a really sick YouTube video of them hitting like from 90 yards in the IPF because I know it's going to be coming. They both have really long, really can kick from really far. So I'm expecting some kind of trick shot video.
Oh, it's got to happen. Yeah, it's got to happen. Maybe a pro day or something.
I'm here for it.
Blake Alderman from 24/7 Sports Network, GatorBait.net, joining us here on Gators Breakdown. Blake, we know the hot name out there, of course, quarterback Matt Corral. Finally got a visit from Dan Mullen on Monday. Corral will use his official visit this coming up weekend. Florida has the offensive staff, most of the offensive staff ready to go, it seems, with Mullen, Gonzalez, recently hired Brian Johnson, Hevesy, and that should pay dividends when Corral visits campus and other offensive recruits visit campus this weekend. But is it just more about showing Corral love with the new staff, or is there legit worry he could not end up in this class after visiting Ole Miss last week?
I think that there was a little bit of worry at first because I think whenever, I think there might have been some ill feelings whenever Coach Mullen was out seeing a lot of these other quarterbacks out there. Maybe saw a couple names. Justin Fields was the big guy that, Mullen really was one of the first kids that I think Mullen saw for in-home visits. So I think there may have been some ill feelings there, but, I do feel like he's starting to come around. Obviously, Coach Mullen getting in there and getting that visit. Coach Gonzalez, I believe, was there the week before, 2 weeks before, something like that, to do that visit there. So, I do think that there was a little bit of a slighted feeling, but I do think that started to come around. Obviously, Dan, I think, wanted to wait until he had the new quarterbacks coach in there, and that was obviously good for him to see it and get that visit. And, I do think that, that there was a chance that maybe at one point during the coaching transition that he was looking around, maybe trying to set up some visits where and see what his options are. But I think now that the hire's in there, he's starting to get that relationship is on a better foot now with Coach Mullen and obviously getting that final visit before he signs. I do think that's kind of solidified things up, getting him there. Matt always has a really good time every time he comes down to Gainesville. So, I expect him to have a good time, get a chance to bond with these coaches more. And, I do think that this weekend could be good for him and really kind of lock things up.
Even if he does sign, Blake, an early enrollee, Would you expect another quarterback to be in the class? Would you expect maybe a lower tier dual threat quarterback out there, or just another quarterback in general, just to get more arms? I mean, Florida has many quarterbacks they can point to right now with Felipe Franks, Kyle Trask, Jake Allen. You may even throw Kadarius Toney in there. We don't know what Mullen maybe can see in him as well. Do you think there's somebody else they could be looking at as well as far as the recruiting world goes?
I really don't have any names right now. I think that Florida will, maybe try to keep – I do think that they try to take 2 quarterbacks. I think you look for a guy that's maybe a little bit more mobile. But right now, I don't know any names. They may try to rattle, come back and circle the wagon on Justin Fields again. Mullen has used his one and only head coaching visit, so he won't be able to go back in early. So, it would kind of have to be, maybe some of these assistants or something trying to maybe, just kind of kick the tires and see what happens. I do think that you'll see another quarterback maybe come to maybe the top somewhere after the early signing period, where maybe Mullen can kind of piece things together during the dead period or something like that. I don't really have any names right now, other than I think Justin Fields is the obvious one if Florida does want to keep trying and see if they can eventually get a visit or something. That could be one, but I think we'll wait and see how some visits or maybe some even names pop out through maybe December to January.
Got you there. So of course, we've been mentioning it the last couple talkbacks here of, hey, another visit weekend coming up. Blake, you have some names that will be visiting campus this week for Mullen's second official visit weekend, and probably, of course, led by Matt Corral with some big names coming on campus.
Yeah, sure. I'm still kind of piecing together the visitor list as I go along. I expect it to maybe it could shrink. It could even have a couple names come to it. But right now, I'm looking at Florida commit Tyquan Thornton, Florida commit David Reese, Brennan Radley Hiles. He's a 4-star cornerback from he's in the IMG area, but from California originally. Cornerback John Huggins, he was that jumbo DB that I mentioned earlier. Corral. Trey Dean, 4-star defensive back out of Georgia. He's a former Tennessee commit, has visited Alabama and Kentucky this past weekend, and he'll visit Florida this weekend. He's an early signee, early enrollee. And then they'll have JUCO offensive tackle Noah Banks. He'll be there Saturday and Sunday. He's taking a midweek visit to Texas on Thursday and Friday, so he'll be there on Saturday. But that's right now. Those are the names that I'm looking at for to be in town this weekend.
Gotcha. And of course, Blake, before I let you go, I've got this question a lot here. Linebackers. It seems to be the position where Gator fans out there are worried about the most when looking at the defense, of course, and the lack of production they got from that grouping this past season, and looking at the depth behind them, there's not much there. So linebacker seems to be a point of emphasis for fans out there.
Sure. I think that, Chatfield was one that I mentioned as one of those 3-4 outside linebackers. Nick Bonito over there at St. Thomas is one. He doesn't have an offer yet, but Grantham has looked into him, is kind of building that relationship with him, and I expect him to take a visit and Florida to be a factor if they do offer there. Quay Walker, also another guy I mentioned earlier. He's an Alabama commit, still looking around. I think Florida has some work to do there. They're going to need some linebackers, especially bringing that shift to the defense, like I said. So I expect some more names to kind of pop up as Grantham kind of continues to piece things along. But, right now he's really kind of focusing on those guys. Absolutely. As well as David Reese, who's committed in there and who will be signing early.
Yeah, I mean, that's one, of course. That's glad the previous staff was able to wrap him up, because
right. Doesn't help whenever his older brother played for Mullen at Mississippi State either. I don't know that there was really even kind of, as soon as that hire was there, when it's the light bulb for me, and I was like, oh yeah, he's not going anywhere.
Not only that, but come on, we got to have the chance of getting 2 David Reeses at linebacker on the field at the same time, don't we?
Sure. Yeah, it's like the Spider-Man meme they have on them when they're pointing to each other.
Yeah. All right, that should be fun. I'm sure announcers won't like that too much.
Yeah, no, I could see Mick in there with both David Reeses on the field at the same time.
I'm sure some people will try and have fun with it, but yeah, there we go. It should be a fun time if both of them get on the field at the same time. Actually, probably be a good thing if both on the field at the same time. So, Blake, what's coming up this weekend? Of course, the official visit weekend, and how can fans find you on Twitter, follow you there, and what to look for as the visitors are on campus this weekend, and the updates you guys will be providing?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Blake_Alderman. That's my Twitter handle. I'll put out a lot of my content and a lot of the stories that we have on the site. And, the place to get all the info is florida.247sports.com. That's where we'll have all of our coverage from the recruiting weekend coming up. Thomas Goldcamp, who's really done a good job of covering the team and throughout this coaching search. He's had a recent VIP update on some of the coaching hires and names to keep an eye on. So, we expect it to be pretty busy as we kind of carry this on to the new year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Blake joining us, like I said, from 24/7 Sports, GatorBait.net, Florida site there. Guys, go out there, join Alligator Alley on that site too. Plenty of input on the message board.
It's been
Back and
popular.
forth. Hey, it's fun on there sometimes, ain't it?
Yeah, always.
Those guys do good in supporting us here on Gators Breakdown. So, Blake, thanks for joining us here, and thanks for all the support you guys give us.
Absolutely, anytime.
All right, I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.